Hey guys, King of Charmanders here. Alright, so now here we have Mr. Rime for Ultra Premiere. So how it happens when you take out legendaries and you don't have Giratina or Melmetal dropping rocks on you, or like I said, Giratina sneaking you to death with its shadows. Well, let's see what happens. Anyways, Mr. Rime is really interesting overall just because of its stats, as it is a glass cannon, as you see. It is high attack, kind of low defense, and decent stamina. Now, what makes the most interesting thing about Mr. Rime is its moveset. However, even though Mr. Rime does have an interesting moveset, unfortunately, it does have a lot of weaknesses. In fact, it has 3 times more weaknesses than its resistances. You resist Ice and Psychic, and you're weak to Bug, Dark, Fire, Ghost, Rock, and Steel. So you resist Ice Shards from Lapras, you resist those Confusions from Gallade, Slowbro. You are weak to Mega Horn. You do get destroyed by Night Slash. Charizard's Fire Spins hurt a lot. Driplim's Shadow Ball is going to eat you to the next dimension. And Machamp will drop a bunch of rocks at you. The good thing is there isn't really a lot of Steel type attacks on here. However, you can get Iron Headed to oblivion at 1,000 miles per hour by the QB Scizor himself. So as you see, Mr. Rime's moveset is what makes it really interesting. In Ultra Premiere, you have the option of using Confusion or Ice Shard. Don't use Zen Head, but it's a bad move, okay? And it also has Icy Wind and Psychic. Icy Wind, Psychic, and Psybeam. So because it has such an extensive moveset, you have the chance of debuffing with Psychic, and also it's 100% debuff with Icy Wind, so it sets up a lot of plays. So like I said, when you take out Legendaries and Mythicals, what do you get in Ultra Premiere? Alright, here we have the PvPoke rankings for Ultra Premiere, and as you see, we have to search for Mr. Rime, and Mr. Rime actually ranks at 170. Just like in Open Ultra, it's a great lead, however, it's actually flips around, so it's a great lead, not a great switch, but it's an okay closer in Ultra Premiere. So it looks like in Ultra Premiere, you do beat Venusaur, Lapras, Gallade, Togekiss, and Ampharos. That's what makes it really interesting, because most Confusion users, most Confusion users actually lose to Togekiss. Because, Gallade's a main Confusion user, but also Slowbro with Ice Beam. But as you see, you're actually able to take out Togekiss with Mr. Rime. So Mr. Rime in Ultra Premiere could be interesting. Now here's the problem. You lose against Swampert, you also lose against Charizard. 2 really big picks. Also Gyarados, Snorlax, and Excavalier. So there's a lot of... there's a lot... Confusion users are generally powerful, so being able to beat Lapras, etc. is really good. However, you do lose against a lot of relevant meta picks as well. So, you be good picks, you do have the good in the bag, and that's Mr. Rime. Mr. Rime ranks at the 1, 2, 3 best lead in Ultra League. As you see here, like I mentioned, the Togekiss Smash is probably the most interesting one because you have Confusion as well. And the closer, Mr. Rime, is at 216. This is its second best position. Of course, it's going to delete Toxicroak from this existence because of Confusion. It does beat Togekiss in the closer, as well as Dragonite, Gallade, and Venusaur. So it does have a lot of play. However, in the closer, you will lose against Ampharos. It's a close matchup, but as you see here, you still lose. Same thing with Lapras. A 505 isn't a great matchup. Now, Swampert does delete you, so does Charizard and Gyarados, so be careful of those. And as a switch, unfortunately, Mr. Rime isn't the greatest switch in the world. However, you still beat Venusaur, Lapras, you even beat Swampert. So, you do have some positives as a switch. You also beat Ampharos and Gallade. So, there are some positives to Mr. Rime in Ultra Premiere. More so than in other leagues. Alright, here's the PvPoke.com metrics. Again, like I always say, please consider donating to PvPoke.com. As you see here, we have Mr. Rime with both Confusion, and we also have it with Ice Shard. So Ice Shard's the preferred moveset, but taking a look at both is preferred, just so we could see what we flip and what we don't flip, if we lack Confusion or if we lack Ice Shard. As you see, I already have the Ultra Premier Cup meta. Over here, we have the 2 shield. Now we hit battle. And here's what we get. So you beat Obama Snow with both variations. You beat Blaziken with the Confusion one because fighting is weak to Confusion. So there you go. However, Blaziken does punch you to death, and that Blaze Kick really hurts. As you see here, you're able to beat Dragonite. You beat Shadow Executor with your Ice Shards, and you're able to beat Gallade with the Confusion. This is a very weird, like, kind of matrix. You lose against Drift. You lose against a lot of picks. You're going to lose against Charmers just because, unfortunately, Mr. Rime is frail. You also lose against Charizard because of Fire Spins. And unfortunately, Charizard's a lot more popular in this meta. Now, as you see, you're able to beat a lot of picks with the Confusion variation. You're actually able to beat Machamp. You beat Lapras, Kingdra, Gengar, Gallade, and Shadow Gallade. With the Ice Shard variant, you only beat one, and you actually lose to Gengar and Machamp. Which is kind of ironic, because, well, it makes sense because because of the way Mr. Rime's typing works, fighting only does neutral damage. So that's what happens. Against Poliwrath, you do beat Poliwrath. You barely beat Poliwrath. However, you do beat with Confusion because, like I mentioned before, fighting is weak to Psychic. You also beat Slowbro. Other than that, you lose against Scizor because Bullet Punch is super effective. Snorlax because of those licks. Swampert because it outpaces you. Both variations, by the way, so Sludge Wave and Earthquake. You do, however, beat Tangrowth with both variations, and you actually double KO. So it's a simultaneous knockout with Ice Shard with Togekiss in the lead. So this is actually IV dependent. So you gotta bank on I think this might be IV. Yeah, so this might be, as you see here, this might be IV dependent. So if they have a bad Togekiss, let's assume that this Togekiss has 10 attack. So let's assume of that. Do you win? Okay. Okay, wait, hold on. Okay, so actually, yeah, it is IV. Yeah, this is IV dependent. If their Togekiss actually has more attack, they win this matchup. What if they have 0 attack? So this is just assuming that they have like a bad Togekiss. So Mr. Simultaneous Knockout. Okay, so it looks like you don't want them to have an attack weight Togekiss. If they have an attack weight Togekiss, they'll flip this matchup. So just be very careful. As you see here, you do beat Toxel if you have Confusion one, and you beat Venusaur with both versions just because Confusion and Ice Shard both are super effective. However, you lose against a lot of things in the 2 shield. So I don't know if I could faithfully recommend this as a lead. Like, it's strongest in the lead, but you just lose against a lot of matchups, and it really does matter whether you're running Ice Shard or Confusion. Alright, so we have the 2 shield now. How about the 1 shield? Let's go to the 1 shield, and as you see here, the 1 shield is where it gets really interesting. So in the 1 shield, you actually are able to beat Ampharos. You also beat Blaziken with Confusion. Well, you beat it with before, but you do need that 2 as you see, you do lose with Ice Shard because it does resist it. You do lose against Fire Spin Charizard. However, in the 1 shield, you are able to flip Clefable, so you do beat Clefable. Not super hard, but you're able to, so like, this is still a very close matchup. With Dragonite, you beat both versions of Dragonite. With the Confusion one, you do not. You beat Drifloon with Ice Shard, and with Ice Shard, you also beat Gallade, Shadow Gallade, Exeggutor. Depending on whether you have Confusion or Ice Shard, that's where Confusion comes into play, because you actually are super effective against Poison. Both versions beat Lapras and Kingdra in the 1 shield. You also beat Machamp in the 1 shield, but you don't beat it with Ice Shard. Ice Shard what Ice Shard does is it basically wins against the Flyers, and Confusion beats the Fighters. That's the basic way to see it. However, you're still going to lose against things like Magnezone, Alola Muck, Obstagoon, just because those Mirror Shots hurt. Like, I believe Magnezone can just go straight Mirror Shot against you. If you see it right here, Magnezone, yep, there's the Mirror Shot, yep, Mirror Shot, Mirror Shot, Mirror Shot, Mirror Shot. If you just go straight, yeah, I believe you can just go straight Mirror Shot, because you have so much energy. Here's what happens, and you resist both Confusion and Ice Shard. Yes, as you see here, just straight Mirror Shot can beat you with Mr. Rime, so just be careful with that. Also, Bullet Punch does hurt. The general basis is if you're weak to it, like Licks, that's why Shadow, Snorlax, and Regulax hurt a lot. And like Dark types, it sucks. And the reason why Swampert does beat you, you have a close matchup, and it's a close loss. However, the reason why Swampert does beat you is because Hydro Cannon outpaces you. So you can flip this around, but Swampert needs chip damage. As you see here, if you do look at the simulation, you are left with 1 HP. So as long as you have a little bit of chip damage, as you see here, you could just confuse. As you see, Ice Shard goes down. You can Psychic it. I think you have to bait though. So this may be a bait dependent matchup. If you go straight Icy Wind, Swampert wins with yeah. So you need a decent amount of damage if you try to go straight Icy Wind. Otherwise, you can Psychic. But You can flip this, but you have to have chip damage on Swampert or like an energy lead. Preferably not having... If Swampert has an energy lead, you're going to be hard-pressed to counter it just because it gets to Hydro Cannon so quickly. Now, you beat Toxicroak with Confusion, of course. Now, this is where it's funny. You beat Tangrowth and Togekiss with Ice Shard as well as Venusaur. So, the 1 shield does flip several matchups. You don't win in the 2 shield. But, as usual, it really depends on whether you have Ice Shard or Confusion. Now, the 0 shield... This is the closer. The closer is probably the worst position you want to be in an Ultra Premier. Because as you see here, you lose against a ton of things. As you see, you beat Obama, you beat Dragonite with both variations. You also beat Shadow Gallade with Ice Shard, but you lose with Confusion. As you see here, you lose against a lot of things. You start losing matchups against things like Lapras. Gengar does beat you in both scenarios, whether you have Confusion or Ice Shard. Kingdra, I think... Drifblim, there's a lot of things that do flip in the zeros. So you're going to lose a lot of things in the zeros that you normally wouldn't. Even if you do it, for example, Confusion still does not do enough against Champ and Shadow Champ in the closer. You do beat Poliwrath and Slowbro, but you need Confusion. So anything else, if you're using Ice Shard, as you see Ice Shard, you lose against the majority of matchups in the meta. You still beat Togekiss, Venusaur, and Tangrowth, but the plus and minus is very dangerous in the closer. You will lose against a lot of matchups in the closer, so try to avoid the closer as much as possible. For what you want to do with Mr. Rime, you need shield. So 1-0s, as you see here, in the 1-0s, you beat a majority of the meta, losing to Empoleon, Excavalier, Lapras if you don't have Confusion, Obstagoon if you have Ice Shard, Caesar and Snorlax. And you're actually able to beat Snorlax in the 1-0s if you have Ice Shard. So you lose about 3 or 4 matchups. So in the 1-0s, Mr. Rime gets really powerful. So as long as Mr. Rime has shield advantage, or if it has shield, it does very well. With the 2-0s making it it actually beats the entire meta with 2 shields. So 2-0s, Mr. Rime in Ultra Premier, it does beat the entire meta, which is really good. In the 2-1s, you're able to beat a lot of matchups as well. But keep in mind, Empoleon, as you see here, Empoleon and Excavalier you do lose against those two, and they're very popular. So be careful about that. Even when you have shield advantage, you still will lose to Empoleon and Excavalier. You will also lose to Magnezone. However, you do flip Alolan Muck, Obstagoon, whereas if you have Confusion, you do lose against Alolan Muck and Obstagoon because Confusion is resisted. You will still lose against Scizor, unfortunately, because Night Slash and Bullet Punch suck. For you, because especially if they get the boost, because Bullet Punch is super effective. And you beat regular Lax and Shadow Lax if you have Confusion, but you do not if you have Ice Shard. As you see, the matchups are very specific, so if you have shield advantage, you do very well against a lot of the Ultra Premier meta, which is really good. However, you need to know what matchups you flip and what you don't flip, depending on what moveset you want to do. For example, Ice Shard or Confusion. Alright, so here we have Mr. Rime. If I had to give it a rating, I would definitely give it a 7 out of 10. It does way better than in the previous leagues. For example, it does okay in Ultra Premier. I won't say well, because well means you can consistently beat a lot of top matchups without needing shields. Unfortunately, Mr. Rime does need shields still. As you see here, the pros is that Ice Shard and Icy Wind Confusion, you have a lot of options with Mr. Rime and how you want to play it. It's strong with shield advantage, which is really good in Ultra, but as you see here, you kind of need shields to make it operate. As you see, if you don't have shields, it's like a 50-50. If you're in the 1-0s, however, Mr. Rime does very well. The 1-0s, Mr. Rime does win 82%, and in the 2-0s, Mr. Rime is actually very powerful. As you see here in the 2-0s, you beat 94% of the meta, only losing to things like Dark types, Bastiodon, etc. And Fire types. Now, if you're in the 2 shield in the Premier Cup, as you see, it's best used as a lead. Best used in the lead or as a switch. Unfortunately, it still doesn't do very great. The reason why I give it a little bit of a higher rating is because if played well, you can kind of squeeze out some relevant meta matchups, but it still loses against a lot of relevant meta matchups as well. It needs shields to be operative because Mr. Rime is basically a glass cannon, so you kind of have to be careful. And you need to know your matchup, so it's difficult to play. Unfortunately, despite all of these pros, unfortunately, Mr. Rime still isn't the greatest thing in the world. The only reason I give it a 7 is because its ability to delete Machamp, etc. However, like I said, it's a very, 50-50. You will lose against Empoleon and Excavalier, 2 popular picks, but you can beat Machamp, you can beat Gengar, etc., and Venusaur. So, Mr. Rime is very difficult. Like I said, it's kind of like a half and half scenario, and it needs shields. Otherwise, it goes down really fast. If you guys like this video, please like and subscribe. Good luck on your Go Battle League sets, and I will see you on the next video.